Blood tasted like cheap metal and failure. I collapsed beneath the stage lights at Zenith Arena, while the crowd watched, my heart giving out after 3 years of starvation, sleepless rehearsals, and singing every difficult note for a group that never let anyone hear my real voice. The girl standing in the center did not call for help. She complained that my blood had stained her designer boots and ordered the manager to drag me away before I ruined the choreography. That was how I died, unseen, uncredited, and disposable. Then, I woke up 30 days before the same debut, with my heart still beating and one unsigned contract standing between me and another 7 years as someone else's ghost singer. Death was not a bright light. It was the smell of burnt ozone from the stage pyrotechnics, the blinding glare of a follow spot, and the crushing pain in my chest as my heart finally stopped. I remembered my knees striking the plexiglass stage. I remembered the gasps from the VIP section. Most of all, I remembered Sienna's voice. She did not scream for a medic. She whined, "Oh my God, she's ruining the choreography. Marcus, get her off the stage." Those were the last words I heard before the world went black. For 3 years I had survived on ice cubes and plain lettuce. For 3 years I had bled through my shoes in the practice room. For 3 years I had sung every high note, every difficult run, and every emotional bridge for our group, only to have my microphone muted during live performances, so Sienna could stand in the center and pretend the voice coming through the speakers belonged to her. Then I opened my eyes. I didn't wake up in a hospital. I woke up staring at the bottom of a particle board bunk bed, suffocating in the familiar claustrophobic heat of the Apex Entertainment trainee dorm. The air smelled heavily of cheap aerosol hairspray, stale diet crackers, and anxiety. I sat up gasping, my lungs filled with air, real functional air. No crushing pain in my chest, no dizzying exhaustion threatening to pull me under. I pressed my hand against my sternum. A steady rhythmic heartbeat answered. I scrambled out of the narrow cot, my bare feet hitting the sticky linoleum floor. Across the room, Paige was asleep, her mouth hanging open, a sheet mask dried stiff to her face. Above me, Chloe snored softly. Sienna's bed was empty. Naturally, she always slept in the master bedroom of the dorm, a perk of her father being a major shareholder at Apex. I grabbed my phone from the charging block. The screen flared to life, burning my retinas. October 14, exactly 30 days before debut. Exactly 30 days before I died of a stress-induced cardiac arrest on the Zenith Arena stage. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. Rebirth, time travel, a glitch in the universe. Whatever it was, it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the raw, trembling anger slowly waking up in my veins. I walked into the cramped bathroom and looked in the mirror. I looked like a ghost. My collarbones protruded sharply. My skin was sallow, bruised under the eyes from chronic insomnia. I was 19, but I looked like I had lived 3 exhausting lifetimes. This was the girl who thought obedience was the currency for success. This was the girl who believed Marcus, our manager, when he said, "You don't have the face of a pop star, Harper. You're lucky we're letting you in the group at all. Just sing the tracks and be grateful." I turned on the faucet and splashed freezing water over my face. The shock of it was brilliant. "I'm not doing it again," I whispered to the hollow-eyed girl in the glass. The words felt foreign, heavy, and real. When I turned, Paige was standing in the doorway, scratching her stomach while flakes from her dried sheet mask fell onto her shoulders. She looked at me with the usual mix of disdain and irritation. "Nothing," I said, grabbing a towel. "Whatever, hurry up. Marcus wants us in studio by Tamd. We're doing the final vocal tracking for Neon Hearts. Make sure your voice isn't shot. Sienna needs to wrap up her solo schedule by noon, so she doesn't have time to wait around while you warm up." In my past life, those words would have sent me into a panic. I would have spent the next 30 minutes doing quiet vocal trills in the shower, terrified of delaying Sienna. I would have skipped my half portion of breakfast to keep my throat clear. But today, I looked at Paige, tossed the damp towel into the hamper, and walked past her. "Tell Marcus I'll be there when I'm there." Paige gave a loud, grating scoff. Excuse me, have you lost your mind? It's the final tracking day, Harper. You know how Marcus gets. I know exactly how Marcus gets, I said, pulling a plain gray hoodie over my head. That's why I'm going to go get a bagel, a real one, with cream cheese. Paige stared at me like I had just announced I was going to swallow glass. You're psychotic. If they weigh us today, you're dead. I'm already dead, I thought. Now, I'm just dangerous. Studio A was a monument to Apex Entertainment's fabricated perfection. Soundproof foam, state-of-the-art mixing boards, and a vocal booth that felt more like a padded cell. When I walked in 20 minutes late, holding a half-eaten everything bagel and a regular full-sugar iced coffee, the room went entirely silent. Marcus, a man whose blood pressure was perpetually visible in the purple veins on his forehead, lowered his clipboard. Sienna was sitting on the leather sofa, scrolling through her phone, looking impeccable in a designer tracksuit. Chloe and Paige were standing nervously by the wall, looking at me like a dead woman walking. Where the hell have you been? Marcus's voice was dangerously low. And what is that in your hand? I took a bite of the bagel. The starch, the salt, the dense bread. It was the most incredible thing I had ever tasted. I chewed slowly, swallowed, and washed it down with the sweet coffee. Breakfast, I said. Marcus's face turned violently red. Spit it out. Now, go to the bathroom and throw it up. Harper, you have a weigh-in at noon. We are not delaying the debut because you decided to gorge yourself like a pig. Sienna looked up from her phone, a pristine, mocking smile on her lips. Come on, Marcus, let her eat. It just means she gets to stand in the back during the chorus. It's better for the visual balance anyway. I'm not standing in the back, I said. Sienna's smile faltered. Marcus took a step toward me. You'll stand exactly where the choreographer tells you to stand, he snapped. Now get in the booth. We need to track the bridge for Neon Hearts. Sienna's going to lip-sync this bridge on the music programs. So I need you to mimic her speaking tone when you hit the high note. Make it breathy. But don't lose the support. I looked at the vocal booth. The heavy glass door, the expensive microphone waiting to steal my voice and give it to a girl who couldn't hold a tune in a bucket. I had spent hundreds of hours in that box, bleeding my soul into a microphone, so that Sienna could go viral for her angelic vocals. I looked at Marcus. No, the word dropped into the room like a grenade. Chloe gasped softly. Paige took a step back. Marcus blinked as if his brain couldn't process the two-letter word. Excuse me, Marcus said no. I repeated more clearly. This time I leaned against the heavy oak doorway. I'm not doing it. I'm not singing Sienna's bridge. I'm not doing Chloe's backing harmonies. I'm not doing the guide tracks for Paige's rap. If Sienna wants to lip-sync the bridge on national television, she can record it herself. Sienna shot to her feet, her phone clattering to the floor. What is your problem today? Harper, are you having a mental breakdown? You know I have vocal nodules right now. You don't have nodules, Sienna, I said, staring her dead in the eye. You just can't sing. You have the vocal range of a dying mosquito. And the only reason you're in this group is because your dad bought the CIO a new yacht last Christmas. The silence was deafening. Even the sound engineer, a quiet guy named No, who usually pretended he was invisible, swiveled his chair around to stare at me. That's it, Marcus roared, pointing a trembling finger at my face. You are suspended, you hear me? Suspended. Get out of my studio. You are breaching your contract, Harper. Do you have any idea how much debt you owe this company? We housed you. We fed you. You fed me ice cubes and told me I was fat. I shot back, my voice remarkably steady. As for the contract, read the fine print. Marcus, my trainee contract expires at midnight tonight. The debut contract, the one locking me in for 3 years as a ghost singer for your little nepotism project, hasn't been signed yet. We were supposed to sign it tomorrow. Marcus froze. He knew it. The panic flared briefly in his eyes, before he masked it with rage. You walk out that door, you're done in this industry, Marcus snarled. I will personally blacklist you. No agency will touch you. You'll be flipping burgers for the rest of your miserable life. You are nothing without this group. I smiled. It was a genuinely terrifying smile. Watch me. I turned my back on them and walked out. I didn't go back to the dorm to pack. There was nothing there that belonged to me anyway. The clothes were sponsored. The makeup was company issued. I had my phone, my wallet, and a journal filled with lyrics I had written. Lyrics Apex had claimed they wrote. When I pushed through the heavy glass doors of the Apex Entertainment Building and stepped out onto the busy Seoul Street, the cold autumn wind hit my face. It didn't feel like a chill, it felt like baptism. I was 19, I had no job, no money, and nowhere to go. I had just made an enemy of one of the biggest entertainment companies in the country. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt entirely, undeniably alive. The immediate aftermath of quitting a highly anticipated idol group a month before debut is a bizarre mix of deafening silence and invisible chaos. I found a cheap, damp studio apartment on the outskirts of the city. It was the size of a shoebox, smelled faintly of mildew, and cost almost all of the meager savings I had scraped together from an illegal part-time job I'd worked before moving into the dorms. I slept on a mattress on the floor, and I didn't care. It was the best sleep I had had in my entire life. For the first 4 days, my phone blew up. Marcus went through the 5 stages of grief in my voicemail inbox. Day 1 was anger. You have 24 hours to get your ass back to the dorm before I sue you for every penny your parents don't have. Day 2 was denial. Look, take the weekend and cool off. We'll pretend this little tantrum never happened. Day 3 was bargaining. Mr. Whitmore is willing to offer you a 2% increase in mechanical royalties, and you can stand next to Chloe in the choreography. Call me back. I didn't call back. I blocked the number. I knew exactly what was happening inside the walls of Apex. They were panicking. Neon Hearts relied entirely on a massive soaring vocal climax. The choreography was built around it. The music video concept was centered on it. Without my vocals to anchor the track, the song was just a hollow, generic beat. And with the debut date, locked marketing campaigns paid for, and the press conference scheduled, they couldn't scrap the song. They had to use Sienna. The thought made me laugh out loud while I was eating instant ramen in my tiny kitchen. A week after I walked out, I got a text from an unknown number. Hey, it's No, the sound engineer. I quit Apex today. Are you busy? We met at a dingy pub 2 blocks from my apartment. No looked as exhausted as I used to feel. He slumped into the booth, nursing a cheap draft beer, and looked at me with a mixture of awe and pity. You really did it, he said. You just walked away. I took a sip of my drink. What happened at Apex? Noah let out a dark, raspy laugh. It's a bloodbath, Harper. Marcus is losing his hair. They put Sienna in the booth to record the bridge. We spent 14 hours trying to comp a single usable take. I had to use so much Melodyne and autotune on her voice that she sounds like a dying dial-up modem. Mr. Whitmore threw an ashtray at the wall. They're scrambling. Good. Noah leaned forward, his eyes suddenly sharp. Listen. The lyrics you took with you, the ones in your notebook. I know, you wrote the melody for Neon Hearts. I know you did, because I saw the original metadata before Marcus wiped your name off the credits. I tightened my grip on my glass. What's your point? No, my point is that you have the raw files of your original acoustic demo, No said. And I have a portable recording setup that blows Apex's Studio B out of the water. They're dropping the debut teaser in 2 weeks. What if we release something first? A slow, dangerous spark ignited in my chest. We didn't go to a fancy studio, we went to my shoebox apartment. Noah padded the walls with heavy winter blankets and set up a single high-end condenser microphone in my closet. It was gritty, improvised, and absolutely perfect. I stood in that dark closet, the heavy fabric of the blankets absorbing the echo. I closed my eyes and thought about the cold stage at the Zenith Arena. I thought about the blood on Sienna's boots. I thought about the 3 years of starvation, silence, and submission. I didn't sing Neon Hearts the way Marcus wanted it breathy, cute, and manufactured. I sang it raw. I stripped away the heavy synths and the generic pop beat. Noah accompanied me on an acoustic guitar. I poured every ounce of anger, betrayal, and hard-won freedom into the microphone. When I hit the bridge, the soaring high note that Sienna couldn't touch on her best day. I didn't hold back. I let the power rip through my chest, clear, resonant, and undeniably mine. When the last note faded, the silence in the apartment was heavy. Noah pulled off his headphones, his eyes wide. "Holy mix it," I said, stepping out of the closet. "And leave the imperfections. I want people to hear the breaths." We uploaded it to a brand new anonymous YouTube channel under the name Ghost. No face, no name, just a static image of a microphone and the title Neon Heart's original demo. We posted it 3 days before Apex Entertainment launched their multi-million-dollar debut campaign for Lumina. The internet is a volatile creature. It thrives on authenticity just as much as it feasts on drama. At first, the video sat at a few hundred views. I went back to working my shift at a local coffee shop, keeping my head down. Then on a Tuesday morning, Apex dropped the first video teaser for Lumina's debut. I was wiping down a table when my phone buzzed. It was no, check Twitter. Now I pulled up the app. Lumina was trending at number 1, but the hashtag wasn't celebratory. It was a disaster. I clicked on the teaser. It was 30 seconds of high-budget visuals. Sienna looked gorgeous staring into the camera with expensive computer-generated fireworks exploding behind her. But the audio, it was atrocious. Even with layers of production, Sienna's voice sounded thin, metallic, and painfully strained. The high note in the teaser was so heavily pitch-corrected. It sounded like a robotic glitch. I scrolled down to the comments. One comment read, "What is this vocal processing? My ears are bleeding." Another said, "This is Apex's highly promoted rookie group. She sounds like a Vocaloid trying to pass a kidney stone." A third asked, "Wait, has anyone heard the acoustic demo that dropped a few days ago? It's the exact same song, but it actually sounds like music." The link to my video was pasted beneath it. I switched over to YouTube. My video, which had 400 views that morning, was currently sitting at 250,000 views, and the counter was climbing by the second. The comments were a wildfire. "Who is this? This is insane. Apex stole this demo and ruined it. Whoever Ghost is, she just ended Lumina's main vocalist before the group even debuted." I stood in the middle of the coffee shop holding the dirty rag, watching the numbers tick upward. In my past life, I died in the shadows so they could stand in the light. In this life, I was going to cast a shadow so massive they would never see the sun again. And this was just the prologue. Rain slashed against the dirty glass of the cafe window, blurring the neon sign of the bodega across the street into a smeared red streak. It was a miserable Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day where the damp seeps into your bones, and the smell of stale, roasted espresso beans clings to your clothes. I was elbow deep in a sink of lukewarm soapy water, scrubbing dried milk off a stainless steel frothing pitcher. The bell above the door chimed sharp and obnoxious. I didn't look up. "We're closing for a private event in 10 minutes. I'm just pulling the last drip pots now. I don't want coffee, Harper." The voice made the tiny hairs on the back of my neck stand at absolute attention. It was a voice that had dictated when I slept, when I ate, and when I was allowed to speak for 3 years. I carefully set the metal pitcher on the drying rack. I dried my hands on my apron, feeling the rough canvas against my skin, grounding myself in the present. I turned around. Marcus stood in the center of the dilapidated cafe. He looked entirely out of place. A shark swimming in a dirty puddle. He wore a custom navy suit, a silk tie, and a raincoat that cost more than my entire annual salary at this shop. His face was a mask of strained composure, but the twitch in his jaw gave him away. He was furious. Worse, he was desperate. "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice flat. "You used your real name on your tax forms for this place. Harper, Apex has friends at the revenue agency. You're not exactly a criminal mastermind." Marcus took a step forward, his expensive leather shoes squeaking against the linoleum. He glanced around the empty shop with undisguised disgust. "Look at this place. Look at you. You're washing dishes for minimum wage. You were going to be a star. I was going to be a corpse," I corrected calmly. "There is a difference." He waved a hand, dismissing the comment as dramatic teenage angst. He walked over to the nearest table, a wobbly laminate thing, and set down a sleek black leather briefcase. The metallic snap of the latches echoed loudly in the quiet room. "I don't have time to play games," Marcus said, opening the case. He pulled out a thick stack of papers and a sleek silver pen, sliding them across the table toward me. Next to the papers, he placed a cashier's check. I didn't step closer, but I could read the bold numbers printed on the heavy paper. $50,000. "That is a non-disclosure agreement," Marcus said, his tone shifting into the practiced corporate cadence he used during board meetings. "It states that you will cease and desist all unauthorized recording, distributing, or performing of any tracks owned by Apex Entertainment. It also states that you will publicly deny being the vocalist behind that ridiculous ghost YouTube channel." I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "And if you don't, Apex will bury you." Marcus's eyes darken, the polite veneer cracking. "We will sue you for breach of contract, intellectual property theft, and defamation. We will drag this out in court until you are drowning in legal fees. You won't just be poor, Harper. You'll be in debt for the rest of your natural life. No label will touch you. No studio will let you in the door. You'll be a cautionary tale." I looked at the check. $50,000. In my past life, that number would have seemed like salvation. It would have paid off my parents' mortgage. It would have bought my obedience. I looked back at Marcus. He was sweating just a little right at the hairline. "You're terrified," I said softly. Marcus stiffened. "I am offering you a lifeline. Do not mistake it for weakness." "You're terrified," I repeated, walking slowly out from behind the counter. I stopped on the opposite side of the table, looking down at the paperwork. "Lumina debuts on Friday. The teaser is getting ratioed to hell. The public knows Sienna can't sing the bridge. The shareholders are breathing down Whitmore's neck, asking why the flagship girl group sounds like a dying cat on their multi-million-dollar debut track. You don't want to sue me, Marcus. A lawsuit means discovery. Discovery means turning over the original studio stems. It means a judge gets to hear exactly whose raw vocals are buried under Sienna's autotune." Marcus's jaw clamped shut. He knew I was right. "You need me to shut up." I continued, tapping the edge of the NDA with my index finger. "Because if I upload another video, say the acoustic demo of the second title track, or maybe a raw vocal run of the chorus, Lumini A's dead on arrival. The group flops before they even step on the stage." "Take the money, Harper," Marcus growled, leaning over the table, his face inches from mine. "You're a 19-year-old girl playing chicken with a billion-dollar corporation. You will lose." I picked up the check. The paper felt heavy, expensive. I held it up to the fluorescent light overhead. Then, slowly, deliberately, I tore it in half. Marcus flinched as if I had slapped him. I placed the torn pieces on top of the NDA and pushed them back across the table. "I don't want your money, Marcus, and I'm not signing your NDA." I looked him dead in the eye, letting him see the absolute terrifying void where my fear used to be. "I died for that company once. I'm not doing it again. Tell Sienna she better start warming up her vocal cords. Friday is going to be a long night." Marcus stared at the ripped check, his face draining of color. He looked up at me, realizing for the first time that he had zero leverage. "You can't threaten a girl who has already seen the end of the world." He slammed the briefcase shut, leaving the torn check in the contract on the table. He didn't say another word. He turned and walked out the bell, chiming mockingly as the door swung shut behind him. I stood in the quiet cafe, listening to the rain. My heart was pounding a strong, fierce, living rhythm against my ribs. I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out my phone. I opened my messages and clicked on Noah's name. "Drop the second demo, tonight. Live television is a ruthless judge. It doesn't care about your budget, your styling, or your pedigree. When the red light on the primary camera flashes on, there is nowhere left to hide." Noah and I sat in his cramped windowless basement studio. The glow of his massive dual monitors illuminating the dark room. Empty takeout containers and tangled ICL RUR cables littered the floor. On the right monitor, A complex digital audio workspace was open, visualizing the brutal compression of Lumina's studio track. On the left monitor, the live stream of the country's most popular weekly music broadcast played in high definition. They actually went through with it. No muttered, rubbing a hand over his face. I thought Whitmore would pull the plug, delay the debut, claim a sudden injury. Whitmore is too arrogant for that, I said, my eyes locked on the screen. He already sold the broadcast rights. The sponsors paid for the slots. Pulling out now would tank the stock price, so they're marching them to the slaughterhouse. Let's see how they bleed. The screen faded from a commercial break to the massive glittering stage of the Zenith Arena. My stomach gave a violent, involuntary lurch. It was the exact same stage, the exact same lighting rig. I could almost smell the ozone in the burning pyrotechnics. I dug my fingernails into my palms until the sharp pain anchored me in the basement, far away from that plexiglass floor. The MC, a veteran pop idol with a blindingly white smile, held up his microphone. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the highly anticipated debut stage from Apex Entertainment's newest shining stars. Let's welcome Lumina. The crowd roared, a mix of genuine teenage excitement and paid agency fan club members. The camera swept across the dark stage. A heavy, pulsing bass line kicked in. The lights exploded, revealing 4 girls posed in striking, asymmetrical leather outfits. Paige was front and center, her face locked in a fierce sneer. Chloe looked pale, her eyes wide and terrified. And there, standing on a raised platform behind them, bathed in a celestial white spotlight, was Sienna. "Here we go," Noah whispered. The first verse went fine. Paige delivered her rap with aggressive competence. She was always a good dancer, hitting her marks with sharp, practiced precision. Chloe took the pre-chorus, her voice thin, but mostly on pitch, heavily supported by a booming backing track. Then came the chorus. Normally on a debut stage, agencies use live augmented reality, a pre-recorded track that sounds live, complete with artificial breathing sounds to ensure a flawless broadcast. But the internet had been merciless for the past 48 hours. My second demo upload had trended globally. The accusations of lip-syncing and vocal fraud were deafening. Apex had been backed into a corner. To prove the haters wrong, they had to turn the backing track down. They had to use raw live microphones. Sienna stepped to the front of the stage. The choreography paused, creating a dramatic V formation around her. She lifted the diamond, ink-encrusted microphone to her lips. The music swelled, demanding power, demanding a voice that could crack the sky. Sienna opened her mouth. What came out wasn't music. It was a thin, reedy squeak, a frantic, breathless struggle against a melody that was 3 octaves entirely out of her grasp. She missed the first note, completely going terrifyingly flat. Panic flashed in her eyes, visible even through the heavy stage makeup. She tried to push harder, trying to find the pitch by sheer force. And her voice broke in a spectacular, agonizing crack that echoed through the stadium speakers. Noah physically cringed, turning his head away from the monitor. Oh God, it's worse than I thought. I didn't blink. I watched the disaster unfold with a cold, terrifying calm. The crowd in the arena went dead silent. The cheering stopped instantly. It was a physical, crushing silence heavy enough to suffocate the performers on stage. Sienna froze. She forgot the choreography. She just stood there, the microphone hovering near her mouth, her eyes darting toward the wings where Marcus was undoubtedly screaming. Chloe bumped into her, throwing off the entire formation. Paige tried to recover, shouting into her mic to hype the crowd. But the damage was terminal. The rest of the performance was a funeral march. Sienna missed every subsequent cue. She stopped singing entirely, just moving her lips in a desperate silent plea while the quiet backing track played underneath. When the final pose hit, there was no applause, just a bewildered, awkward murmur from 3,000 people who had just witnessed a multi-million-dollar train derail in real time. The camera panned away, cutting hastily to a commercial break. No slowly reached out and muted the monitor. The silence in the basement was thick. "They're done," No said quietly. "It's over." The internet is going to tear them to shreds. I picked up my phone. I didn't need to check Twitter to know what was happening. I could feel the tectonic plates of the industry shifting. Apex had built a castle on a foundation of lies, and I had just pulled out the cornerstone. It's not over, I said, standing up from the rolling chair. Tearing them down was just the demolition phase. Now we build. Noah looked up at me. What do you mean? I grabbed my jacket from the back of the sofa. Get your portable rig. The good microphone. We're going out. Where? It's 11 at night. To the Neon District, I said, pulling the jacket on. People are angry. No, they feel cheated. They were promised a voice and they got a fraud. It's time to give them what they actually want. Noah stared at me for a long moment. He saw the cold fire in my eyes, the absolute absence of hesitation. A slow, reckless smile spread across his face. He started unplugging cables from his interface. Give me 5 minutes, he said. The Neon District at midnight is a sensory assault. It's a labyrinth of narrow alleys packed with street food vendors, neon signs buzzing with faulty wiring, and crowds of young people looking for an escape. It was the heart of the underground music scene. A place where manufactured pop was mocked, and raw talent was the only currency that mattered. The rain had stopped leaving the pavement, slick and reflective, mirroring the harsh blues and pinks of the store signs overhead. We found a spot in a small concrete plaza near the subway entrance. It was a known busking territory, usually occupied by acoustic indie bands or aspiring rappers. Tonight, it was empty. Noah worked with frantic efficiency. He set up a battery-powered amp, connected his laptop, and planted a heavy microphone stand dead center in the plaza. He didn't use a cheap dynamic mic. He brought out the Neumann condenser, the studio-grade hardware we used in the closet. It looked ridiculous sitting on the damp concrete. A piece of high-end machinery in the grid of the street. Line check, Noah said, tossing me the heavy cable. I plugged the microphone in. I didn't test it with a vocal trill or a polite tap. I just stood behind the stand, looking out at the plaza. A small crowd was already gathering, drawn by the sight of the expensive equipment. The quiet intensity of our setup drew teenagers, holding plastic cups of cheap beer, couples on dates, and exhausted office workers heading toward the train. A few of them were looking at their phones, clearly watching the fallout of the Lumina disaster. I pulled my hood back, letting the harsh streetlights illuminate my face. I wore no makeup. My hair was pulled back into a messy knot. I wasn't wearing sponsored couture or heavily styled accessories. I was just Harper. The track is cued, Noah said from behind his laptop. Ready when you are. I grabbed the microphone with both hands. The metal was cold. A lot of you watched television tonight, I said. My voice echoed across the plaza, crisp and massive through the amp. Head snapped up, conversation stopped. The sheer authority in the audio quality commanded immediate attention. You watched a company try to sell you a lie. I continued, looking directly into the growing crowd. They sold you a face, and they expected you to ignore the fact that there was no soul behind it. They thought you were stupid. They thought you wouldn't notice. Someone in the front row, a girl with dyed blue hair, gasped and pointed her phone at me. The red recording light blinked. My name is Harper, I said, my voice steady, echoing off the concrete walls of the subway entrance. 2 weeks ago, I was supposed to be the ghost, the voice in the machine. I was supposed to stand in the back, while someone else took the credit for my blood, my sweat, and my range. I said no. The crowd had swelled from 20 people to over 100 in a matter of seconds. More phones went up. The murmurs rippled through the plaza as the realization hit them. It's her, it's the ghost. I nodded to Noah. He didn't hit play on the acoustic demo. He hit play on the full uncompressed, original studio instrumental of Neon Hearts. The heavy pulsating bass hit the concrete like an earthquake. The synths roared to life, not thin and cheap like on the broadcast, but rich, aggressive, and cinematic. The crowd went dead silent. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and let 3 years of rage, starvation, and death pour out of my lungs. I didn't just sing the song, I tore it apart. I attacked every note with a feral intensity that you can only find when you have nothing left to lose. I hit the low register with a smoky, grounded grit, and when the pre-chorus built up, I leaned into the microphone and let the power loose. There was no choreography to worry about, no camera angles to hit, no manager screaming in my earpiece to smile more. There was just the music, the cold night air, and the absolute freedom of claiming my own voice. When the bridge approached the infamous bridge that had destroyed Sienna's career an hour earlier, I opened my eyes. I looked at the sea of glowing camera phones. I planted my feet, dug deep into my diaphragm, and hit the high note. It wasn't breathy, it wasn't cute, it was a massive, soaring, resonant belt that shattered the night sky. It held steady, cutting through the heavy bass track like a diamond blade, soaring higher and higher with flawless vibrato. The reaction was instantaneous. The crowd did not just cheer, they screamed. It was a visceral, guttural reaction to witnessing raw, unadulterated talent in the wild. I finished the final vocal run, letting the last note fade seamlessly into the instrumental outro. The music stopped. The echo faded into the wet concrete. For 3 seconds, there was absolute silence. Then, the plaza erupted. The roar was deafening, bouncing off the brick walls and echoing down the subway stairs. People were screaming, clapping, holding their phones up, like lighters. I stood there with my chest heaving, the cold air burning my lungs. I wasn't suffocating. My heart wasn't failing. It was beating with a violent, beautiful strength. Noah looked up from his laptop, a massive grin splitting his face. He mouthed the words, "We got it." I unclipped the microphone from the stand, laid it gently on top of Noah's speaker, and walked away. I didn't stay for an encore. I didn't beg for followers or ask them to subscribe. I just pulled my hood up and disappeared into the neon labyrinth of the city, leaving the fire burning brightly behind me. By the time I reached my apartment, the hashtag Ghost Unmasked had eclipsed Lumina's debut entirely. The video from the plaza had 1 million views. The ghost was dead, the artist was born. Morning arrived, not with sunlight, but with the obnoxious continuous buzzing of a cheap smartphone vibrating against particle board flooring. I woke up tangled in a thin quilt, staring at the water stain on the ceiling. My throat ached. It was a good ache, the kind of raw soreness that comes from actually using your vocal cords, not from screaming silently into a pillow. I reached down, grabbed the phone, and squinted at the screen. 142 missed calls. 8,432 unread messages. I opened Twitter. The entire platform was a war zone, and I was the nuclear bomb. The hashtag Ghost Unmasked was sitting comfortably at the #1 spot globally with more than 3 million posts. Beneath it, the hashtags Apex Fraud and Sienna Lip Sync were trending in 2nd and 3rd place. My street performance video had been ripped, re-uploaded, subtitled in different languages, and plastered across every corner of the internet. I sat up, ignoring the cold floor beneath my bare feet, and clicked on a financial news app. Apex Entertainment was publicly traded. When the market opened at 10 Apex's stock went into free fall. It had dropped 18% in the first 30 minutes of trading. The shareholders were bleeding out in real time. A sharp knock on the door made me jump. I pulled on an oversized sweater and opened it. Noah stood in the narrow hallway, holding a cardboard carrier with 2 massive iced coffees, and a look of terrified euphoria on his face. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "Don't tell me you're just waking up," he said, pushing past me into the apartment. He set the coffees on the tiny kitchen counter and pulled a thick legal-looking envelope out of his jacket pocket. I was resting my instrument, I said, taking one of the coffees. The caffeine hit my bloodstream like a spark plug. "What's that?" "That no," said, pointing to the envelope, "is a cease and desist order. It was taped to my apartment door this morning. I'm assuming you have one in your mailbox downstairs. Marcus is going nuclear." I picked up the envelope, ripped the top off, and scanned the heavy card stock. It was full of threatening legalese, injunctions, defamation claims, demands for immediate removal of all digital content related to Neon Hearts. I tossed it into the trash can. Are you insane? Noah practically yelled, retrieving the crumpled paper. Harper, they have a legal team that costs more than this entire apartment building. They can tie us up in court for the next decade. Let them try, I said, taking a slow sip of my coffee. Read the news, no. Mr. Whitmore is currently fighting off a shareholder revolt. Apex's sponsors are pulling out. The cosmetic brand that sponsored Lumina's debut stage issued a public statement at Beijing ONM officially terminating their contract, citing a misalignment with its values of authenticity. Apex doesn't have the cash flow for a prolonged legal battle right now. This paper is just a scare tactic, a ghost story. No stared at me. How do you know all this? You're 19. Because I watched this company operate from the inside out. I thought. Because I spent 3 years watching Whitmore ruin lives to save $1. I just pay attention, I said aloud. What else do you have? Noah let out a shaky breath and opened his laptop. 4 emails from major record labels. Real labels, not idol factories. We have an artists and repertoire representative from Vanguard Records asking for a meeting, and an independent distributor is offering a 70-30 split on streaming royalties if we sign a single album deal today. He turned the screen toward me. It was a dizzying array of corporate logos and desperate subject lines. They all wanted a piece of the viral sensation. They wanted to package the ghost, put me in a slightly edgier outfit, and throw me right back into the machine. I looked at the screen, feeling a cold, familiar knot tighten in my stomach. Vanguard Records was infamous for locking artists into airtight 360 deals, taking cuts of their merchandise, touring, and publishing. It was a different master, but it was the same chain. No. I said no, blinked. No to which one? No to all of them. I walked over to the small, grimy window and looked out at the bustling city below. If I sign with Vanguard, I become an employee again. I become a product. They'll tell me what to wear, who to collaborate with, and what demographic to target. They'll auto-tune the grit out of my voice to make it radio-friendly. Harper, we can't do this alone. We don't have public relations. We don't have a marketing budget. We don't need them. I turned around, locking eyes with him. The industry is a dinosaur, Noah. It's bloated, slow, and stupid. The internet just proved it. We have the audience's attention right now. We own the narrative. Why would we hand the keys over to a bunch of executives in suits who couldn't tell a C# from a car alarm? So, what's the play? He asked, his voice dropping in resignation. He was starting to understand that there was no stopping me. We build our own label, I said. We register a limited liability company today. We use a digital aggregator to push our tracks directly to Spotify and Apple Music. We keep all of the master rights. We write, record, and produce a 5-track IP in this apartment. And we release it in exactly 3 weeks. Noah ran a hand through his hair, laughing softly. A sound entirely devoid of humor. 3 weeks, you want to write, track mix, and master a professional IP in 3 weeks in a closet. Yes. Apex is going to try to block us at every turn. They'll blacklist you from music programs. They'll pressure Spotify into burying our music in the algorithm. I don't care about television, I said. Algorithms cannot stop human curiosity. Let them try to bury us, we'll just dig faster. The next 3 weeks were a blur of sleep deprivation, burnt coffee, and relentless, agonizing creation. We registered an independent label name, Phantom Audio. It cost me the last $300 in my bank account. We were officially broke, entirely unrepresented, and completely liberated. We converted my entire living room into a makeshift studio. We hung heavy acoustic blankets from the ceiling. We stole foam egg cartons from the grocery store dumpster to pad the corners. We didn't leave the apartment for days at a time. I wrote like a woman possessed. The lyrics poured out of me, dark, sharp, and brutally honest. I didn't write about teenage romance or manufactured heartbreak. I wrote about the suffocating weight of expectations. I wrote about the metallic taste of a microphone. I wrote about girls who starved themselves for men who wouldn't look twice at their corpses. Noah matched my manic energy. He was a brilliant producer, finally unshackled from Apex's rigid, sterile pop formulas. We leaned into a heavy alternative rock, sound infused with dark synth-pop undertones. It was raw, unpolished, and dangerously aggressive. Meanwhile, Apex Entertainment was fighting a losing war. They tried damage control. They booked Lumina on a popular late-night radio show, hoping a controlled environment would rehab their image. It was a spectacular miscalculation. We were in the middle of tracking vocals for the third song on the iPeer when No pulled off his headphones and turned up the volume on his second monitor. "You need to see this," he said. The live feed of the radio broadcast showed the four girls of Lumina sitting in a cramped booth. They looked exhausted. The host, a notorious industry veteran known for asking uncomfortable questions, leaned into his microphone. "So, Sienna," the host said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "The debut stage was rough. A lot of rumors are circulating about vocal tracking and missing demos. Care to clear the air?" Sienna gripped her headphones. Her eyes were bloodshot. The pristine, untouchable auras she carried in the dorms was completely gone, replaced by the cornered panic of a trapped animal. "It was a technical malfunction," Sienna stammered, reading off a cue card resting on her knees. "My in-ear monitors failed. I couldn't hear the backing track. It was completely out of my control." "Right," the host chuckled. "But what about the acoustic demo floating around online? The one sung by the girl everyone is calling the Ghost. It sounds remarkably similar to your lead single." That was the breaking point. Sienna's face flushed a violent shade of red. She slammed her hand down on the table. "She's a liar," Sienna screamed into the microphone. Her voice was shrill and breaking. "Harper is a jealous, vindictive liar. She stole that song from the company. She was just a backup, a nobody. She purposely sabotaged us because she couldn't handle the choreography. Apex made her, and she ruined everything." Next to her, Paige buried her face in her hands. Chloe looked like she was going to throw up. The host simply stared, a greedy, delighted smile spreading across his face. Well, the host said smoothly, "I think that answers our questions." Noah paused the stream. The silence in my apartment felt thick-heavy, with the absolute finality of what we had just witnessed. "She just confirmed your identity on national radio," Noah said, his voice quiet. "She admitted you were in the company. She gave you the one thing Apex has been trying to suppress. Validation." I whispered. "Apex tried to scrub the interview from the internet. But you can't put smoke back into a burning building." By midnight, the hashtag Harper was trending worldwide. The blacklist didn't matter anymore. Apex used their leverage to get me banned from every terrestrial television broadcast in the country. They strong-armed streaming platforms into denying my tracks editorial playlist placements. It didn't work. I didn't need the television. I had a phone, and I had the truth. I sat down on my cheap mattress, propped my phone up on a stack of books, and hit record. I didn't use a ring light. I didn't wear makeup. I wore the same gray hoodie I had walked out of Apex. In high, I said to the camera, "My name is Harper. You know me as the Ghost. Sienna just told you that I was a nobody. She told you that I couldn't handle the pressure. But what she didn't tell you is that the contract Apex tried to force me to sign would have given them the legal right to use my voice for the next 7 years without crediting me. It would have forced me to stand in the shadows while someone else lip-synced my pain on a brightly lit stage." I picked up my acoustic guitar. They told me I didn't have the face of a pop star. They were right. I do not. I am just a musician. And if they won't let me sing on their stages, I'll sing right here. I played a stripped-down acoustic version of Resurrection, the lead single from our upcoming iPeer. It was a brutal, soaring ballad about crawling out of a grave you dug yourself. I uploaded the raw, unedited video directly to YouTube and TikTok. Within 24 hours, the video hit 10 million views. The pre-save link for the iPeer, which I had pinned in the comments, drew so much traffic that the distributor's servers crashed. We didn't just have an audience. We had an army. November 13, I woke up and for the first time in my new life, my hands were shaking. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the digital clock on my nightstand. The numbers glowed a violent, unforgiving red. It was the exact date in my past life. Tonight was the night I died. Tonight was the night my heart gave out on the Zenith Arena stage, leaving me bleeding out on the plexiglass while the world stepped over me. A heavy, suffocating anxiety pressed against my chest. A phantom pain radiated down my left arm. My brain logically knew I was safe. I was in a dingy apartment miles away from Zenith Arena. But the trauma lived in the bone marrow. The body remembers the slaughterhouse. Noah knocked on the doorway, holding a clipboard. He looked up, catching sight of my pale face, and his smile vanished. "Hey," he said softly, setting the clipboard down. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I let out a harsh, breathless laugh. "Something like that." "What's the schedule for today?" "Today is the drop," Noah said, his excitement returning, albeit muted by my visible distress. "The IPR hits all streaming platforms at midnight. But more importantly, tonight is the show." We hadn't booked a television broadcast. Instead, we rented a venue called The Foundry. It was a legendary, grimy underground rock club that held exactly 800 people. It smelled of spilled beer and decades of cigarette smoke. We announced the show on Instagram 48 hours ago. Tickets sold out in exactly 12 seconds. "Right," I said, forcing myself to stand up. The floor felt solid beneath my feet. My heart was beating fast but steady. The show. The day dragged on in a tense, nerve-wracking crawl. Every hour that passed felt like a heavy weight pressing down on my shoulders. I kept expecting the chest pain to return. I kept waiting for the dizzying darkness to pull me under. By 10:10 p.m., we were at the Foundry. The green room was nothing more than a concrete bunker with a single flickering fluorescent bulb. An appealing leather couch. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. "Here," Evelyn said, walking into the room and tossing a glossy magazine onto my lap. Evelyn was an independent music attorney we had hired on retainer with the advanced streaming money. She was sharp, ruthless, and wore blazers that looked sharp enough to cut glass. I looked down at the magazine. It was a premier business publication. The headline read, "The Fall of an Empire." Apex Entertainment files for Chapter 9 restructuring following stock collapse. "Whitmore was forced out by the board this morning," Evelyn said, leaning against the doorframe. "Marcus was fired. Lumina has been placed on an indefinite hiatus, which is industry language for quietly disbanding the group before the lawsuits begin. It's over, Harper, you won." I stared at the headline. The empire had fallen. The machine that had ground my bones into dust was broken. But the victory felt hollow. It didn't cure the shaking in my hands. It didn't stop the clock ticking toward the hour of my death. "Thank you, Evelyn," I whispered, setting the magazine aside. At 10:10 p.m., the stage manager poked his head into the room. 5 minutes, house is packed. I stood up. Me knees felt weak. I grabbed my in-ear monitors and walked out into the narrow, dark hallway leading to the stage. Noah was waiting for me by the stairs. He held out his hand. "You got this," he said. I nodded, gripping his hand tightly. I walked up the short flight of stairs and stepped out onto the stage. The wall of sound hit me like a physical force. 800 people crammed into a dark, sweat-soaked room, screaming at the top of their lungs. There were no light sticks and no rehearsed fan chants. This wasn't the polished, plastic devotion of the idol industry. This was raw, feral energy. I walked to the center of the stage. The microphone stand was waiting. I grabbed the mic. The clock on the back wall of the venue caught my eye. 10:10 p.m. The exact minute I collapsed in my past life. My breath hitched. The phantom pain flared in my chest, a sharp, terrifying squeeze. The crowd's cheers faded into a dull roar, replaced by the memory of Sienna's whining voice and Marcus's screaming. The darkness crept into the edges of my vision. The stage floor felt like it was tilting, threatening to swallow me whole. I closed my eyes. I gripped the microphone so hard my knuckles turned white. No, I thought, not again. I refuse. I took a deep, shuddering breath. I forced oxygen into my lungs. I felt the expansion of my ribs, the powerful, relentless thud of my own living heart. I wasn't starving anymore. I wasn't silent anymore. I was alive. I opened my eyes. The darkness shattered, replaced by the harsh, brilliant glare of the stage lights. The clock ticked to 9:00 p.m. I had survived. A slow, genuine smile spread across my face. I looked out at the sea of faces. People who had come to hear the truth. Not a fabricated lie. "My name is Harper," I said into the microphone. My voice steady, powerful, and ringing clear through the heavy speakers. "And I have a lot to say." I nodded to No behind the drum kit. He hit the count in. The heavy, distorted guitar riff ripped through the air, vibrating in my chest, a beautiful, violent reminder of life. I leaned into the microphone and let the music consume me. I didn't sing to hit the notes. I sang to tear the roof off the building. Every belt, every raspy low note, every breathless harmony was a testament to survival. I watched the crowd scream the lyrics back at me. Their voices blended with mine, creating a sound louder and more powerful than anything a corporation could ever manufacture. I was not a ghost singing in the shadows. I was the fire that burned the house down. And from the ashes I had built an empire of my own. Some bridges are built to be crossed, and some are built to be burned. So nobody can ever follow you back into the dark. I chose the fire, and it illuminated a path they told me didn't exist.